Hello, folks. Welcome back to the Britt Kanawha West Hancock Athletics Podcast. Dan Kroll here on December 6th, 2023 for episode 98. And this evening I have Amber Hejlik, now Amber Evans, on the podcast with me. Amber is living in the great state of Texas these days with her husband and family. Amber's a 2004 West Hancock grad. I'm an 05 grad, so it's going to be a fun one where we can talk about people we know in common and went to school with and had in class. So I'm excited for that. How you doing tonight?
I'm great. It's nice seeing you again.
You too. She's not nervous at all. She has not made it aware to me at all that she was nervous for this. I always get a kick out of, I've done 98 of these, so I don't fret about it anymore. But it always is fun to me to hear people go, I didn't sleep last night, or I completely forgot about it till you messaged me this morning. So it's always fun for me to hear that. So before we get to Amber, I got to recognize my sponsors. I have 17 of them tonight. They all gave to the Sanger Legacy Fund. I have Nick Schmidt, Levi Dawn Trucking, Trolson Auto Parts, Window World of Mason City, the Britt Car Truck Bike and Tractor Night Cruise, Miller and Sons Golf Cars, Carlson Drainage, which Darren Carlson's a classmate of Amber's, Ewing Funeral Home and Monument Company, Doug and Kathy Zool, Daniel's Auto Collision in Charles City, Triple B's Food Trucks, Swenson's Hardware, Jeff and Becky Nielsen, Coach Chuck Boozman, the Britt Food Center, White Barn Picket Fence, Kelly Real Estate, and Lifetime Nut Covers. Like I said, those people and those companies give to the Sanger Legacy Fund. That money that goes to the Sanger Fund is used to fund the West Hancock Hall of Fame, scholarships for seniors, support any athletic or activity funds at West Hancock, or any other community outreach programs, any needs, things that the Sangers and are passionate about. So if you want to sponsor the podcast, you can get a hold of me or go to sangerstrong.com to learn more and to give just in general. Way back when, I always highlight my episode from 50 episodes ago, and that would be episode 48 when I talked to the members of the 2007 football team that made it to the semifinals that year. So I'll have that linked on my Facebook post. If you want to check out that past episode, that'd be great. All right, we're going to get started here with, like I said, Amber Hejlik, aka Amber Evans now. I always like to start with introductions. Tell us what you're doing these days, family, job, where you're located, all that good stuff.
All right. Well, I reside in McKinney, Texas. I moved to Fort Lauderdale, Florida after college, and about 12 years ago, my husband Chris and I moved to Dallas area where we had our 3 children. Macy is 11 and in 6th grade. I have Rylan, and she is 9 years old in 4th grade. And then I have Isaac, who's 7 years old and in 5th grade. My husband Chris is the vice president of estimating for a commercial roofing company. And I teach STEAM to our district's 3rd through 5th grade gifted and talented students.
Can you explain what STEAM is for the
STEAM is the new word for STEM, but it's science, technology, engineering, art, and math. So we do, they learn different things in math with conjectures, and we do Lego robotics. So they had NASA missions this year, and we just get to do a lot of neat things with science and technology and math, basically. So
at your school, are you guys considered are you considered like a specials teacher, like with art and music and PE? Are you kind of in that rotation, or how does that work at your school?
No, there are some districts that do that, but we actually, all of our gifted and talented students go from 21, they have 21, we have 21 elementary schools, and all of the 3rd graders get bused to our school for gifted and talented on one day of the week. And then we have 4th and 5th graders on Tuesday and Wednesday, half of the schools, and then the other half of the 4th and 5th graders get bused on Thursday, Friday. So we kind of have where they get pulled out for 2 days a week to get their math and their they get their humanities and their STEAM at our campus 2 days a week and miss class at their home school.
It's a day's undertaking to get kids from 20 buildings to 1 building, that's for sure. So we're going to talk some sports here. Then the teaching nerds in us will probably get to that here in a little bit. I'm a teacher. She's a teacher. We'll have a little fun talking about school. But obviously this is an athletics podcast, so we'll start with that. Like I said, you and I went to school together for 3 years until you graduated. So I got to watch your athletic career and vice versa. And one part that always sticks out to me is when we were on the boys and girls basketball teams, and we actually shared a coach, which is kind of a rare thing. Coach Robin Drake, for I think it was 2 or 3 years. I can't remember exactly. He was the boys coach and the girls coach. Not just like he was the head boys varsity and assisted the girls. He was the head boys and the head girls coach at the same time for a couple of years. Which is just mind blowing to me because like I'm the head boys and girls golf coach, and that's a completely different animal than basketball. Like I get my kids prepared for a meet and then I send them out to the meet and they play. Basketball is X's and O's and strategy, and I don't know how Coach Drake did what he did for those couple years. But what do you remember about playing for Coach Drake and his dual status as boys and girls coach and some of your teammates?
Well, I remember being excited when I found out he was going to be our basketball coach for the girls. Because I just know he loved basketball. He was really in it I mean, I was just excited to have someone that I felt like knew basketball and knew what they were doing. But I was also kind of worried about that because I didn't know if we were going to be like prioritized, over the boys, or I know like basketball in our grade it was our main thing since we were like in fourth grade, and we went to tournaments and we did all the things I mean, growing up, we played together forever. And so it was so important to us. And so I was just hoping he was going to feel the same way as we did. And so I was worried about like schedules lining up, him like, is he going to miss our games because there's going to be boys games, that kind of thing. But it all really worked out. I just remember like he really did a great job managing both. I remember we had you had only so long for practices after school. So they would have, I think it was like an hour of the girls' practice, and it was a very focused practice because we had to be out so the boys could come in, and then we would go lift weights. And so while we were having practice, the boys were lifting weights. And when the boys were having practice, we were lifting weights. And it was just a very like structured, focused practice because the time limitation that we had. Yeah, he was, I enjoyed having him as a coach. I do have a memory of him. He always used to say he would run me full court defense and offense during a game he would barely pull me out. It'd be like all 4 quarters. And I don't know. I just remember coming off the bench for a timeout and he'd say, "Suck it up, Hejlik," and you're not coming out. And I would look, I don't know like what kind of face I must have been giving him. I just felt tired. I don't know. I might have, who knows, my teenage self, if I was, if he thought I wanted to come out or what. But I just remember he was always kind of tough on us. But I appreciated that about him. So
The thing from the boys' side, I remember, I mean, like you said, he was a pretty serious, straight-laced dude, and he was hard on us, and not in a bad way. But before he took over the girls' job, we'd be in the locker room with him before the game, and it was business, business, business. And he's coaching the girls, and so it's Coach Hesley with us, and we knew Dale really, really well and loved Dale. He was a little more lax. He was like the perfect counterpart of Coach Drake. Coach Drake was the intense one. Coach Hesley was the more, reel him in, chill him out a little bit, keep us a little more relaxed when Coach wanted to be hard. And
yeah.
Oh man, I think we had more fun in the locker room than we did on the court. When you guys were out there busting your tails off for him and we were getting ready to go do that, we had a blast in that locker room. I always thought that was some of my favorite memories. Joel Pauls, Jake Maddox from your class, Chad Eisenman, Justin Johnson, Cal Schuler, some of my buddies in my class, David Smith, a grade below. We had a good time. So some of your teammates, like you said, your grade was pretty good. You guys played a lot growing up. Denise Rasmussen, Casey Finch, Angie Pritchard, Brittany Johnson, Ellen Ing, and Linda Ekoff were your classmates. And then you guys, I also put on my notes, you had Sarah Swanson, who was a couple years younger than you guys, and she's a kind of an all-timer, future Hall of Famer in all the sports. So talk about your senior year. You guys went 16-6. You only lost in the conference to Forest City twice, Garner twice, and then you lost to Emmitsburg in non-conference, and then you lost to them in the playoffs. And you already brought this up. full court pressure. I just remember you and Angie Pritchard were very similar type players, and defensively, you'd always kind of have the privilege of having to guard the other team's best ball handlers and put the pressure on them.
Yeah, and you can't forget Mary Mallon in there either, because I
Oh.
remember we had her with, or Mary Johnson, but she was part of that crew too, I believe. I just remember playing with her and enjoying that. And it feels strange not to include Alicia Zato, or Alicia Rasmussen, because she played with us since 4th grade, and she had moved that, she played with us that sophomore year, but then that junior, she moved her junior year. It was really, honestly, it was really comforting having Sarah Swanson coming up, because we lost a ball handler, and I knew she was a strong ball handler. And she was always very athletic. And I know I listened to her podcast that she did with you not that long ago. And I know she talked about being so intimidated by us. And I have a completely different memory and perspective. Like, I remember being excited to play with her and run on the track with her. So it's funny how you can have those perspectives when you're probably, how age seems like it must be such a factor in high school, right? Of who's older, who's younger. But I always kind of imagine what it would have been like to have, Angie, Casey, and Alicia, and Sarah, and Mary, like all of us, ball handlers together, because that would have been a pretty sweet team if Alicia could have stuck it out. But one of my favorite basketball memories was growing up as a team with that group of girls. And I love that about the small town like mentality. I mean, I struggle with that with my own kids right now, and it's such a big district. It seems like you have to kind of choose your sport. You have to stick with it. Yeah. And if not, you're behind. It's not like you get to play a different sport all year round, and it's like, oh, basketball's over, now we're going to move on to this and play with the same teammates and players. So being in a small town and getting to play with the same teammates and get to really get to know each other well, and so you can play together well instead of having to switch teams every time you join to play that sport. But we started out in 4th grade with my dad coaching, and Beth Rasmussen and Connie Ekoff. I think it's Hildebrandt now, Linda Ekoff's mom. And they took us to a lot of tournaments, which were some of my favorite memories. And we went to a basketball camp once, and I remember we stayed at Linda's uncle's, and they have an ice cream shop there. And we went up to the ice cream shop, and if you got when we got over, I feel like Casey Finch was the most excited about this ice cream shop, but and I think Michelle Nelson was there with us too. But you get 6 huge scoops of ice cream, and if you can finish it, you get to sign your name on the wall. And so we were trying so hard, and you get timed, so you can write your time down, but you had to do it within an hour or something like that. But oh man, we did not feel very well after that, but we all did it. We all powered through, probably had ice cream headaches.
Did you have another game after that?
I think it was a basketball camp. So we had camp all day, and then that afternoon or that evening when we were done, we went up and did that. So then we had to go play the next day again. But I think it was a 3-day camp or something. So we're somewhere on the wall in Sibley Ocheyedan, somewhere up there at an ice cream shop on the wall if they didn't paint over it. So I just have a lot of tournament memories as a kid. I remember we were behind by 2 seconds in a game one time, or behind by 1 point, and there were 10 seconds left in a game. And we didn't give up. We always wanted to win the tournament. So I think I tipped the ball. Angie got it, threw it to Alicia, and it was one of those circling buzzer beaters, and we won it. So those are really my best memories with basketball. But you bring up high school, I looked forward to basketball with that team every day. That was really fun. And I remember Coach Drake telling us, you're gonna miss this someday. You're gonna miss it. He'd always kind of use that as the crutch of you gotta work hard, you gotta do your best, we gotta keep going in the tournament because you're gonna miss this. And I miss it. I mean, he's right, kind of what happens.
Could you still go out there and play a little bit if you had to?
I, as a teacher, I taught fifth grade for the last few years, and I play with my kids at school sometimes, and it's really funny because they don't think like, oh, Mrs. Evans, she's not going to be able to really play, and then I, because they'll be like, oh, I'll race you, or I'll let's play horse, or and so they're kind of surprised, I think, when they're like, oh, you played basketball. So, so no, I still play, but man, I pull things, and you get older and you can't keep up
I,
anymore.
I do things with my students where I can be somewhat stationary, just like shooting hoops or like being on the secondary on defense in football and pick off a pass where I only have to take about one step. And the kids are always like, I didn't expect that. So, but
I've hurt myself twice now at school from trying to participate with the kids. We decided to go up the water slide for our field day. My co-teacher and I, and she slipped on the blow up slide and she took me out. So I pulled, and I still kind of have some issues with my right leg from that, but so I pulled my leg. And I think I was doing a race for one of our fundraisers, and they asked some of us teachers to do it, and I hit my knee on the floor and thought I was good all day until I stood up from my desk and my knee was swollen and my my leg went straightened. So I do way more than I should at this point. Um,
I
but
was
the kids
at
have fun
the
with it.
quarterfinal football game up at Wapsie Valley this fall. I rode up with a couple of the Sanger boys, and I'm standing there on the one of the bleachers with Kane Zool, who would be Rachel Zool, her son, who just graduated a couple years ago. And I said, "Do you miss being out there?" And he goes, "I could go out there right now and keep playing." And he goes, "What about you?" And I'm like, "I haven't played in 20 years. That memory of wishing to be on the field has been gone for a decade, and now all I do is assess injuries. Like if I were have done that on the field, I'd be in the hospital. I just assume like how much that would hurt at my age. I'm like, yeah, it's getting old type of stuff is fun. So yeah, well, let's move on to track here. It was kind of your main sport, I think, where you found your most success. You had Coach Fink and Coach Boozman as your coaches, and they've been brought up on a lot of these podcasts I've done with some of the female athletes. Talk about those coaches, with Coach Boozman sponsoring this podcast. So thanks, Chuck, for giving to the Legacy Fund.
They were a fun duo. I think it helped that they were good friends and they got along well too. Just with I don't know, that just they always were kind of in sync with practices and everything. And I always thought they did a really good job conditioning us and having our track practices planned out. I will say I heard somebody talk about the cat and mouse game that we used to play in the halls before it was, warm enough to go outside. But my least favorite part of track practice was when they would take us over to this loop. I don't know if it was like 6th Street, 7th Street. There's like a loop of houses there. Somewhere over there. It's been a while. But they would have us run like a 300 and then like a 500 and an 800, but all these like sprinting. It was really to like focus on improving our 400s. And I just remember like we would go like 300, 500, 800, 500, 300 or something. And those were, I really disliked those practices. Those were the ones I remember.
Can I just go do the long jump, guys? Can I just?
Yeah, that's kind of how I felt. I mean, I like to sprint, but I really liked anything under a 400. I was this, I was not a long distance girl. I will say I feel like I spent more time with Coach Boozman as my coach, partially because the long jump with Morgan Shields, or Morgan Cole. I'm gonna butcher everybody's last name. I don't know what they all are now, but I think it's Morgan Cole. But he just always helped facilitate with us, like improving our long jump, and spent a lot of time with us there. And then we always started out with him at the track meets, which that was always I always looked forward to that part with Morgan.
Like I mentioned already, long jump was one of your specialties, and you're also a hurdler, sprinter. In 2002, as a team, you guys got 6th at the state meet. We had a stretch there. I think we won 5 or 6 district titles in a 7 or 8 year period, and then set a handful of top 10 finishes at state. I had a couple, step area as a state champion. Just a couple events that won state or got in the top 6 or medaled. That 2002 season, you competed at state in the long jump, the shuttle hurdle, and the 4x2. I mean, if I remember correctly, you guys were no more than a couple points away from top 3 in the state and bringing home a trophy. What do you remember about would have been your sophomore season, 02, getting 6th?
It's all the years kind of blurred together for me. So I do I know I came in my freshman year. I know you asked about my sophomore year, but I know I came in my freshman year with some really fast runners from my sister's class because my sister Allison was a senior, and a sprinter. And that's when I was able to join that shuttle hurdle team. And I think that's when I kind of got brought into learning how to do hurdles, with Dusty Smith and Tasha Johnson and Steph Airy. And I hope those are correct and I'm not blurring teams together from those years. And then I believe we competed in state that year, but I'm not sure if we placed. But I know we set a school record at some point. And I remember every year or every time after that, it was no matter who our team was, we were just trying to beat our own record throughout those years. And then I think when Dusty left, Angie Pritchard joined that hurdle team, I think that sophomore year, maybe. And we just kept practicing to get our splits down. And I don't know when it began, but we always had those white headbands. And that was a thing that, I don't know, it was a requirement. I don't know if that started with Dusty and Steph and Tasha or if that happened later, but it was, I don't know, it was a thing. We had to have our white headbands. And I know it was just a solid track team with the juniors and seniors because we were like you said, district champs back to back. And I just always remember Tasha and Steph were always really patient, teaching me how to do hurdles, helping me perfect my form. We would practice inside behind the gym. There was one long hallway and people would come in and out of the locker room, but we would they were kind of dodging us as we're trying to set up our little mat hurdles and go over them. And then Tasha and I always remember we had to switch directions based on wind direction. So there were some times where I would finish or she would finish, but she could 3-step them and I couldn't really. And so I always, she always wanted the wind with her. So I always had to go into the wind. So we would always check before a meet, which way is the wind going? So we could decide who was going to run which leg. And one time we had to switch and I had to finish a race. And I think it was at districts. And they had kids holding the rope and the rope, they didn't let go in time. And the wind, it was really windy that day and it whipped it and it cut my neck. People were making fun of me but my sister's wedding was the next week. So I remember we were just trying to cover it up as much as we could for her wedding. And I got all sorts of a hard time for having a cut across my neck, but
did Tasha get the win because she was older than you or faster, or how'd that get decided?
It had to do with our steps. It had to do with our steps. She could 3-step. She could every hurdle. And so the wind helped her continue to be able to do that the whole way through. Where I could only do that, I would start to the hurdles would creep up on me and then I'd have to if I 3-stepped, I'd have to 4-step. So I just was better at taking shorter 4 steps, it had to do with our steps. So it was actually easier for me to go into the wind because then I could just 4-step comfortably. Yeah. And the wind really made a difference. I don't know. It seems weird probably, but.
You mentioned your sister Allison a few times. Where is she these days?
She is in Castle Rock. She's out south of Denver.
Okay.
Yeah.
Married, kids?
Yep, she's married. She's married to Luke Schecker, and she has a daughter. She has a daughter, Lucy, that is my daughter Ryland's age. They're only a few weeks apart. And then she has Lark, who is 5, a daughter Lark. Yeah.
Yeah,
so I have 2 little girls.
We were saying before, we haven't seen each other in person, you and I, in years. I can't even guess the last time I've seen your sister. But she was she in Mark Sanger's class? Was that the same grade? So I was never in high school with her, so I just know her in passing mostly, but yeah, I was just curious.
Yeah.
So your junior season, you said you got six as a team in 2002, 2003, your junior season, even better. We got fourth as a team. We were 4 points from a state title. I remember Coach Boozman in the paper saying like, we were a half a second here, a half a second there from being really, really within a point of winning that state title. I didn't find that you long jumped at state. Did you not make it as a junior? Am I correct, or did you make it? I just missed
Oh,
it.
I think I did.
Okay, I just must not have
Uh,
my research.
I'm not sure. I can't remember. I don't know. Speaking of long jump, like Morgan, Morgan Shields and that was like one of my favorite things at track was to go long jump with her. And I just always loved it. We always encouraged each other. And there was a time that I felt really bad. She was always consistently jumping a little longer than me. So she would go last. So if we were, I think they always stacked it like the longer or the better jumpers jumped last or further at the end. And I just remember one time, I think it was at Belmont Clemmy, and we were both having a good night, but she went last and I went right before her, and I broke the school record, I think. And I remember Boozman being really excited, but then I remember being really nervous because Morgan was right behind me, and then Morgan had broken it as well, but she hadn't realized that I did. And so like it was like this, it was always this whole like you both want to encourage each other because you're like competing against each other, but yet you both want to get first and second no matter who gets it because it's for the team. And so it was always this weird relationship of like wanting each other to do better than each other, but then like still competing against each other. It was always really strange. I always felt like those, shot put, discus, long jump is kind of hard because you're like trying to be a team, but yet competing against each other. And but yeah, I think we both I think I want to say that we both did long jump when she was a senior and I was a junior, maybe at state together. I don't think I placed.
Yeah, I know
In fact, I never thought I would place. I don't even think I got out of prelims if I did go down. So I was really shocked my senior year when that happened because I wasn't consistently great. I was pretty average.
And you're referring to getting fourth at state as a senior in 04. But 03, your junior year, your 4x2 team took fourth and your shuttle hurdle team was third at state. Do you remember how close you guys were to winning a state championship in either of those races?
I think the shuttle hurdle was a tight race, if I remember correctly. And I'm not sure about the four. Yeah, I don't know. I kind of remember it. I kind of don't like.
The hard thing is it's 20 years ago and it's literally like
a long time ago.
A minute and a half of your life, where it's easy to have everything blur together. So
yeah.
Let's move to your senior year at 2004. Another top 10 finish at state. You guys took ninth. Your 4x2 team took fifth, sixth in the shuttle hurdles. Like we said earlier, you got fourth in the long jump, and your 4x4 team won the state championship. That was you, Sarah Everett, Angie Pritchard, and Allison Segrist. What was that like winning a state championship down at Drake?
It was surreal. I remember we were all on cloud nine. I remember Boozman, he switched the order up for that 4x4 because I think I usually started the 4x4 and he put me at the third leg. I think I didn't necessarily need a runner next to me. Like I was going to run what I could for a 400 regardless if people were next to me or not. So I think that's why he had told me he switched my leg. If I kind of remember that a conversation or something about that he was going to put me third and there was a reason why, but I just remember my whole thing was if I can give it to Allison Segrist in first, she will keep it in first. Like that girl was consistently, she's just good. Like she was just as strong starting her 400 as she was ending it. And so you just knew like, if the first three, if we could do our job and get it to her, like she's going to hold it. And she did. And I remember getting the baton in second and just thinking, I got to pass this girl because I got to get it to Allison in first. And if I do, like she'll hold it. And I just remember a lot of screaming at the end, like of us, like just hoping she was going to make it across the finish line because, those 400s, that last 100 is questionable if you can feel your legs. And yeah, I don't know. I don't think we really expected that. So that was fun. That was good.
Do you remember how close the race was? Or did she by a decent margin?
I think they might have been behind by a second or I mean, like I kind of remember the gap. And I think I have it on tape somewhere, but it was enough that you just hope that she didn't. I mean, it was close enough, I think, where like you just hope the last 50 yards she didn't like start to slow down because the girl could have caught her kind of thing. But she kept that distance pretty like consistent the whole way. And so I don't know. I just remember it being kind of on edge. And my memory could be wrong too. So
I put Allison Seegers in a category with Lori Talak and Steph Airy as girls. I just remember being like all business, no nonsense type of runners when it came
consistently consistent, like just you could trust them, like they were consistent.
Yeah, like I did a podcast with Steph and Lori, and I was just like, you guys, you almost borderline scared me to a degree, like being at track practice. I'm just a white boy who's just there because Coach Sanger said I had to, and I want to stay in shape. So we're kind of messing around, and then you look over at some of those girls that end up being like all Americans in college, and you're like, they live for this sport. Like that track was their thing, and I always had a lot of respect for those type of girls that put the work in. So.
Yeah, Steph was always really good. If I kind of remember right, if we were doing hurdles or if there was any kind of, we were having fun or something, she was really good at being like getting us back on track or focused.
Yeah.
But like in a nice way. She was just always nice, right? Like she never came across, like bossy or rude, or she was a very focused person, but she could always lead like in a nice way.
Yeah, lead by example. Yep. Yep. Do you still have all your medals and stuff, or in a box somewhere at your parents' house?
I think if I remember right, I took pictures of them and then tossed them because I think I got to the point of like, what am I going to do with these? Or that didn't happen and I'm thinking it did and they're still there somewhere.
Back in Britt?
But I think when we were moving to Florida and I just had to go through some things and I think I did keep, like, I think I kept the, Coach Fink and Coach Boozman framed like all of our records or like our state champion, like our plaques. If we, and I think they even had like our personal best times, like they framed a bunch of these plaques for us and I kept those. And so I think it was one of those things of like, okay, I'm going to keep this part, but like, what am I going to do with all this? Like, cause I had those boards, like they stuck them all to the boards. Right. And I don't know, at a certain point, you're just like, I can't keep moving it all.
Man, that hurts a little bit to hear that.
Does that hurt?
I'm a high school sports nerd, so
I'm gonna say this and then I'm gonna laugh because I'll like go back and in 5 years I'll be like, oh, there's my medals. Maybe I didn't get rid of them.
Put an addendum on here. I'll if we find out, find them, I'll attach a picture or something to it. So
there you go. If I find them, I will let you know.
And one reason I was excited to do this podcast with you is you and I, my parents, they had Mark's Pizza for years and everyone knows that. And I still get people that bring up Mark's Pizza. But after Mark's Pizza, they took over the barn up in Buffalo, just south of Buffalo Center, north of Woden, Golf Course Country Club. You got hired by my folks to be a waitress at the barn, and bunch of unruly middle-aged men that would come out for some golfing and food and drinks and stuff. We had a good time at the barn. What do you remember about working for my folks?
I really enjoyed working there. It was like being part of a family, kind of. And who was it? Cindy
Cindy Malin. Yep.
Cindy Malin worked there too. I just remember kind of doing everything. Like I might have been hired as a waitress, but like I helped prepare food. I was a bartender at times. Sometimes I went out on the beer cart. Sometimes but I do remember it was really exhausting. It was, I was 18 and I had 4 or 5 jobs that summer. And so that was like I pretty much just worked all day, every day. I would start out with, Little League in the morning or swim lessons, going to lifeguarding. And then I was either going there or serving at another restaurant. And I was just trying to bank before college, I think was my goal. But I just remember that first night I served, I think there were the Red Hat ladies
Oh,
that
yeah.
were in there, and they took, I don't know if there were about 20 to 40 of them. I mean, I just remember the two long tables that they took up, and I had a full tray of drinks and I just spilled all of them.
Yeah, my grandma would have
That
been.
was how I started out at the barn. It was great.
Yep, and I'm pretty sure my grandma was in that group because she was part of the Red Hat Society, I think is what they were called. So,
Is that what they're called? Okay.
yeah. And oh yeah, bar glasses were broken pretty much on the regular, but um, I would bartend, and that group of people that would sit at that big circular table, kind of off to the left of the bar, me facing
Mhm.
out. Oh, I'd get them around every 3 minutes. It felt like it was like, how are these people surviving this? Because it was just constant drinks, but made some pretty
Well,
good money and had some fun. So
and I remember your brother Eric, he was out playing golf and it was past dark and it's Eric, right? Yeah. He was out there playing golf and then it was past dark. Lights were off and sometimes he would get locked out. Like I remember him knocking on the door because it's like people forgot he was out there.
we
Come
made it
in.
to Woden once before we realized that he was still there, and we had to turn around and get him. It was like midnight. We're on our way back to Britt, and we're like, "Was Eric with us today?" And he was like 7. Yes, he'd been 7, 8,
He was
9 years
little.
old, and we had to turn around, and it was dark, and we're like, "Eric," and we hear, "Yeah," and he was still on the putting green, just chipping and putting. Yeah, he
And every
was.
time I came home, I remember I would ask my dad several times when he got to high school age, just asking him about his golf game. Like, how's he doing in golf? Is he playing high school golf? Just because I just always knew he was so into it when he was that little, I assumed he.
Yeah, well, he did okay his freshman sophomore year. He got 5th at state, and then he didn't even make state his junior senior year. He
Okay.
kind of went into a little bit of a slump, but he did okay. Did better than I ever did. So
Him getting locked out. I
yep,
just remember.
had a lot of fun out there, and a lot of good times in the food service industry. But like you said, my folks worked their tails off. They did that thing 14, 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. I did
It
the
was
math.
hard work.
They put more hours in a 9 month period than most people do in a 12-month period, that show up at 9 and leave at 5, type of job. And it's just
I believe it.
physically and mentally demanding. They were.
And it was weekends too, because I remember coming in on some Saturdays and Sundays and early or late and just even how late sometimes, even like Cindy was there and
Yeah,
with cleaning up and
yeah,
yeah, it was a lot.
7 a.m. to midnight a lot of those weekends. So yeah. So you said you ended up in Florida after high school. What made you go to Florida?
My husband, my husband moved there before we got married, for his job. So he covered sales for 3 states, Iowa, Nebraska, Minnesota, and then he kind of got to switch territories for sales. So he covered Fort Lauderdale, Miami, Puerto Rico, and the Keys. And it was a larger territory, so it was kind of a bump up for him. And so yeah, we were like, let's go try out Fort Lauderdale.
So did you meet in college in Iowa
We met in
actually?
college. So yeah, after high school, I went to UNI. I got a degree in business and Spanish. And I met him. I met him we started dating my sophomore year. And so we dated, yeah, pretty much all through college. And um, he moved, and then I graduated, and then he came back, and we got married, and yeah, that's pretty much what happened.
You went from Florida to Texas then?
Hmm. For
Yeah.
his job again.
And
Yep.
then you said business and Spanish. How'd you end up in elementary education per se?
Well, I did marketing research at the end of college, and then I did product development when I was down in Florida. And I, I had a hard time in that job because I wanted to do work that felt like it mattered. And I always, when I was in third grade, when they said, what do you want to be when you grow up and you dress up? I dressed up as a teacher. When I was younger, I always wanted to be a teacher. And of course, I didn't think I want to go that route because, teachers don't make any money either. So I was kind of trying another interest of mine. But yeah, I ended up switching when I was in Florida. I ended up going back and taking some master level courses and doing an alternate certification program and switched to teaching. And then when we moved to McKinney, I got my first like full-time job in teaching. So.
Well, people out there watching, we're going to start nerding out on teaching stories here and education issues. So if you're not into that, thanks for watching. We appreciate you. But if you want to hear a couple elementary teachers talk about the chaos that is our lives, stay tuned for a little bit here. So you said you're doing STEAM right now. You did fifth grade for a while. What's been your favorite thing to teach?
I teach math and science, and I started in third grade and taught all subjects. But I just really like teaching math and science, and getting girls excited about math and science, because sometimes you find that, boys naturally gravitate towards that being their favorite subjects. But sometimes you find kind of over the average, not all, but you kind of find that some girls already like by fifth think, oh, I'm bad at math or I can't do that, right? And so trying to change that attitude of like, you're deciding this at the age of 9 or 11 that you're already bad at this, like, yeah, too soon.
I'm not a math person. I'm like, you're barely a person at this point.
You're barely a person.
Like you guys don't do anything. Just trust us. What are some of your favorite teaching stories? Any good, interesting, funny, weird kids?
I had quite the rough start when I started teaching in South Florida. I took a long-term sub position, and I was not in a very, I was in a very difficult school. And I just remember to the point where I like you have a kid in elementary that was arrested, and you're just like, that happens in elementary? That like I didn't know. Anyway, the kid came to school, and the principal tells me that day I'm supposed to keep him apart in the classroom from the boys that were not getting along, and that was eye-opening to me. So I have some experience on things that I didn't really know existed on that end of things. But funny stories, one thing I love about teaching is it's like a family. So everybody you teach with, they become your best friends because you go through thick and thin together, planning together, all waking hours of getting everything ready. Just how you're going to help some of these kids. And funny stories is probably I had a hermit crab as a class pet once, and I went up there on the weekend and it was missing. And I found it way down the hall in like a whole nother grade levels pod in the middle of the hallway. So I was glad I found it before school started on Monday.
How'd it get out? Like what, cage just open?
That is the question. I'm not quite, I think it like somehow we had something holding on with paper clips and it like could climb the paper clips. I didn't know that was a thing, but trying to think of like, I don't know. I mean, we have funny stories of like lizards getting in our school and trying to catch them, and kids, just the things kids say. They just can make you laugh. I don't really have specific stories, but
I think every teacher should have from day one written down every funny or weird thing that gets said, because you think you'll remember something forever, and then it's like, well, tomorrow brings a whole new list of stuff. Like there's just
I started a book to do that, but I probably got through about 3 pages of stories,
Yeah.
and then you don't have time. You barely have time to do, I mean, you just don't have time
Yeah.
to like write them down, right? When you remember them.
Just getting to the bathroom some days is a challenge. So you're like, I don't have time for anything else. But
Or you get to the end of the day and you're like, wait, did I go to the bathroom today?
yeah. So in Iowa here, we have some interesting things going on in education with, and it gets political. What's the Texas education scene looking like? Are there any issues or crazy weird things or politics stepping in? I know I don't really like to talk politics on here, but it's kind of
Yeah,
a hand in hand thing anymore. So
I mean, I just see, I don't know. My dad would probably tell you, get really frustrated and passionate about it, probably more than I should. But the cost of living right now is becoming a big problem because, we're losing a lot of good teachers because, I mean, when you have people starting out or people that don't even have a college degree starting out with more than what they're making, and I think part of it is just the fact of like having a livable wage. I can teach because I have a spouse that can support me, but if I was on my own and didn't have that spousal support, I couldn't live here and do that. So I think that's part of the problem. I see we've had a lot of turnover, and we're in a pretty good district, but we've had a lot of turnover and just filling teaching positions with people that actually can teach 22 kids in a class. It's been rough. So I think just replacing that. So I think that's kind of one of the issues. I also think the media is portraying, I don't know if it's something the government's trying to portray, if it's something the media is trying to portray, that we're failing. All these kids are failing. We're doing so horrible. The kids are not doing as well as they did years ago. Like, we're failing our kids. And I have a different perspective because when I go in the classroom, I don't know about you, but our kids can do so much more than I ever could at that age.
yeah,
Like, they know so much, and they're doing things like, I mean, they're learning division, and I hadn't even learned division by that age, or they're learning just the things they can do technology wise. And I just I just think part of it has to do with perspective of what's applicable to them in this day and age versus what was applicable to us
yeah.
then. Does that make sense?
Yep. Are you familiar with the BTC model, building thinking classroom? Have you seen or read any about that?
No.
We've adopted that at our school, and building thinking classroom is getting kids up out of their seats, defronting the room, and having the kids more in charge of their learning. Especially, we use it a lot for math. And so I have like 7 whiteboards on my walls that are,
Oh yeah, vertical whiteboards. Yeah,
vertical
yes.
whiteboards.
We call it something
And
else probably, but yes.
every day I have kids up and about doing stuff, and I will throw tasks at them that I have to sit there. Like when I'm looking for a task for them to do, it's not attached to our Bridges math curriculum. And it's like, okay, what am I gonna do to get these kids to think? And I'll find some problems and I'll be like, holy cow, I have to sit there for 10 minutes and figure out how to even solve this myself. It's not anything, just real simple. And I just tell the kids, here's your task, go. And these kids with another group, 2, 3 kids in a group will just fight through something for 15, 20 minutes at a time. And I'm like, we were never asked to do that growing up. It was more rote and memorization type of stuff, and which is nothing wrong with that to a degree, but we've learned over the years, like, there's a whole lot more than just memorizing facts, because you can look up anything and everything nowadays. So
Well, and
I
kind of like everybody says, the new math, and it's like, it's not new. It's that they're teaching it so kids can manipulate numbers and have number sense, and they can do more mental math. And I think that, it's, I don't know. It's really, to me, because we have number talks and we do things that are really getting the kids to manipulate the numbers and understand the value of the numbers and like what to do. And I get if you, as a parent, if you want to help your kid and they're like, well, I have to do it this way, that could be frustrating. I could understand that. And I think we're losing sight because, in math, you want to get to the most efficient way anyway, but you just want kids to know, like, understand what they're doing.
They can conceptualize it, then they can do it.
Yeah. So I think that it's, everybody says the new math, and it's like, actually, if you talk to a lot of our kids, they can explain what they're doing. They have such an understanding that I didn't have till I was much older. I mean, I didn't even understand our base 10 system till I was teaching it, because I remember teachers teaching it, like, but I didn't really understand it until I was teaching it. I was like, oh, this is what they were always talking about. Like, so I don't know. I just think that it's being portrayed that our kids are failing. And I just think our kids actually know, I don't know that the tests match what's applicable anymore. And I think that, you know, you talk about people that say, oh, nobody teaches. I mean, I see it sometimes on our social media, you know, why don't the teachers teach the kids cursive? Or and it's like, we do. They actually learn it for 2 different years, but are they writing letters and sending them in the mail to people anymore? Are they actually applying it, or are they typing? And so then they don't use it. And I think if, you know, they don't use things, they lose it, right? Like if you don't use it, then it's not applicable.
My thing with cursive is it's all fine and dandy, but like our time is so valuable at school, and we can barely get kids to print
Mhm.
as it is. Like we're gonna have them write 2 different ways. Like, are you like, where are we gonna find the time for that?
Yeah, it just feels like they're adding more and more for them to learn.
Yeah,
And so there's like less time to teach it all. And so I just, I mean, there's stuff that I mean, when we have kids that are learning things that I didn't learn, they're learning it in 3rd grade and I didn't learn it till 6th grade. Right. And like they keep moving down standards, and sometimes it's not even, their brains aren't ready for it yet at that age. Um, and so it's interesting, like, and you can struggle all year in 3rd grade and then they get to 4th grade and the light bulb goes off and they understand it. And it's really just because their brains are finally ready to learn it. So there's some different things there. I'm really interested to see, I went to a conference this last week, down in Dallas. It's the it's the Gift Ed conference. And I went to a lot of AI sessions. So I'm really interested to see what role AI plays in education, and if education is going to embrace it, or how that's going to look.
I think for a lot of secondary kids, that paper writing, they're doing a lot of essays through AI. Like it can generate an essay for you, but then you obviously have to make it your own. You can't just,
Mhm.
it's like stuff like that. I'm like, man, that it seems almost scary. Like, what are we just at the tip of the iceberg on some of that stuff? And obviously you're a STEAM teacher, so technology is a big piece of that, and I'm all about technology. But you talked about people think we're failing our kids. It's like I think to a large degree they have so many different things pulling them in different directions, and technology is one of those biggest things. And they're going to have to use it because that's going to be the future of their jobs and stuff. But at the same time, we're just allowing them to sit in front of screens all the time. And then, of course, when they come to school, the last thing they want to do is something non-screen related, and it's just like it's a horrible cycle of we're more and more fighting for their attention, more when we never had to do that 10, 12 years ago. Our teachers never had to fight for our attention. My attention span sucks. Like watching the Iowa State women's basketball game tonight, right before we recorded, as soon as the game goes to commercial, I jump on my phone and scroll Facebook or check my email. I'm like, whatever happened to just sitting there and just being, and like at
Mhm.
school, kids are always wanting to be entertained. All right, guys, we got done with our lesson 5 minutes early, have a little free time. Like I used to think that's where you just sit and visit with your friends, and to them, it's like they get on their computers and do something. I'm like, oh, we
That's
are,
when we had time to like write a note or build
yeah,
roller coasters out of construction paper.
do something. And
We got in trouble. I remember in 5th grade, we were Mr. Wells's class.
oh boy,
We built all sorts of paper roller coasters on our desks.
oh,
We connected them all together.
that's a good
I think
segue.
Mitch Horseman was like the main creator of them. He was really artistic and could really engineer. He is an engineer now, but could put all those things together. And I remember Mr. Wells telling us to throw them all away and get rid of them all, because he got in trouble, I think, because we had went through all a lot of construction paper, and they realized that they were like, where is all the construction paper going? I don't know. I just
You
remember
guys are the
that.
reason we were in the red all those years.
Yeah, the red for the construction paper.
That was a good segue, though. Who are some of your teachers in Britt that you have fond memories of?
Um, Oh man, I loved school. So I loved most of my teachers. I had Miss Brum in kindergarten, Miss Bruns, which I think I told you before the segment. Miss Bruns was my first grade teacher, and I had her last year before she retired, and my dad had her first year of teaching. So that was always kind of a cool family moment. Mrs. Ashland was my second grade teacher, Miss Farrell, Miss McCauley, Mr. Wells, Mr. Heeman. We played hot dog stand a lot in sixth grade, I remember, with Mr. Heeman. It was like this, you ran a hot dog stand and it had math involved, but I remember we always looked forward to playing that game. Um,
But
Miss
we,
Wilhelm in high school is probably one, and Miss T were probably two teachers that really, and Mr. G, since I'm related to him too, but those three are probably the ones that really stick out to me. Well, Miss Sanger. So I liked Miss T. She had technical creative journalism as a class, and she was always really good about, I remember her telling me one time to just write it out. It doesn't have to be perfect the first time you write it. Like, get it all down and then we'll revise it. Because I always wanted to write every sentence perfect before I moved on. And then Miss Wilhelm, I majored in Spanish in college, and I would have not been able to do that. Like, we were so lucky in Britt for me to have her as a Spanish teacher for 4 years, and such a good Spanish teacher. Those
yeah,
are, I don't know.
I took college Spanish just for a year at Central, and my Spanish professor did comment because I was in there. I want to say I took it with Chad Eisman in college, and she was like, you guys must have had a good Spanish teacher," because she could tell that we were a little farther ahead than a lot of the other students in our class. And um, she was always pretty serious about things, but at the end of the day, you look back and go, she prepared us for college, which is kind of the goal. So I always enjoyed Mrs. Wilhelm. Give her crap about being from Belmont. That was always our thing. She, Belmont people coming to Brit or whatever, but we were lucky to have her. And Miss T, I keep in contact with. Of course, she edited my book.
Mhm.
Above and beyond is the only way to describe Diane Troutman. Like, she, even 20 some years later, she's still there, and I bet you it's Wednesday night, so I know she's probably still at school. I think Wednesday's her grading night, so she's a very, very dedicated lady. So, you know, do you keep in touch with any classmates, or I asked you earlier, how often do you get back to Brit?
I mean, I come back around every 4th of July. I ran into Linda Ekoff and Mitch Horseman when I was back this last summer for a second and got to say hi. I keep in touch with Alicia Rasmussen pretty regularly. And spoke with Ashley Lang not too long ago. Ashley Greinberg. I don't know. I never know if I should say the
Yeah,
name I know them as or their married name.
either way.
Um, but yeah, no, it's hard. I wanna communicate with them more than I do. It's just hard when you live this far away and everybody has their lives and their kids, and yeah.
Yeah. I'm still bitter with Mel Zato because Ryan Zato was one of my best friends, and that was freshman year he moved away. And Mel actually stayed at our house during Ragbri a handful of years ago, and I was still just giving her a hard time because
We're moving all of our friends away.
the guys she ended up going to Algona with, they never even got married anyway. So it was like, it ended up, come on, Mel. And she's like, I know, I'm sorry. And it all worked out though. So
Yeah.
don't talk to Ryan as much as I should, but I need to reach out just like a lot of people. But yeah, so um, anything else you want to add before we hop off this thing that you can think of?
No, let me think. I don't know.
Any people you forgot to mention earlier, or shout outs or things like that?
Um, Let me think about it for a second here.
Any good Ellen Ing stories? I think everyone has a good Ellen Ing or story or two.
Oh, I just remember we were at Sibley Ochita, that basketball camp I was talking about, and oh, that's just, she was a hoot. I just remember a lot of laughs. I mean, I can't really remember anything specific. I feel like there was something that revolving around us trying to get her to watch a scary movie. Um, and I just, yeah, she just was
Jumps.
always so positive and always had a lot of laughs. I mean, I guess really, I guess the only other thing was, I talked about Mary Mallon. I don't, have you had her on this podcast or not?
I haven't. I
Okay.
need to go.
See, I just remember pitching with her. She was always such a good, I did play softball like the first 3 years. Um, and then I wanted my summers. So, but she was just such a good pitcher. And, I just remember those times with her when we would like switch on and off for that. But I just feel lucky growing up in a small school district. Like I got to play 4 sports all year round. And you knew like this is, basketball season, this is track season, this is softball season, and my kids, and I just am trying to figure out as a parent how to manage it in this large school district we're in, where you kind of have to pick and choose the one or two things that you really want to do. And that's hard because the kids have a lot of interests. So
Yeah, I've done 98 of these, and I feel like we say it almost every time on these episodes. Like, pretty blessed from where we grew up, and not everywhere is like Britt. Like some people go, oh, all these little small town schoolers are the same, and I know it's easy to make it sound like I'm being biased when I say it, but like just the success we've had over the years athletically, the great teachers we've had. I mean, we were at the tail end of that group of high school teachers who had been there for 30 or 40 years. The Sangers, Mr. G, Mr. Timmerman, uh, all those guys. I mean, there's Mr. Pauls. Um, that doesn't happen much anymore. My wife's been at Interstate 35 now for 11 years, and she's in like the top 12 for seniority district wide. I've been there for 6 years, and I've easily reached the top half of seniority. Like Britt used to have nobody leave year after year. I mean, those teachers were staying put.
that is one way we were lucky. I mean, I do love the opportunities that my kids have in a large district, but there's also like that it just always seems kind of like a rat race too, right? Like it's just, in the picking and choosing. And so there's so many things that I wish I could give them from my childhood. That, from a small town perspective too, but so yeah, there's, positives and negatives to both, but
Do they enjoy coming back to Britt in the summer and just getting to kind of live the small town life, or like you did
they
this
do.
all
They
the
love
time?
going to the farm and they get to, ride ATVs and hang out with grandma and grandpa and swim, and they like going on the lake and fishing and boating. So yeah, we come back usually every summer, and get to spend some time
Yeah.
doing some
Well,
fun things.
I think this is a good place to wrap it up. I have
Right.
one more podcast coming up in 2023, and that's next Wednesday, the 13th, and that's with all 5 state championship winning quarterbacks. That's Jim Deemer, Chad Klein, Logan and Braden Lear, and now Mitchell Smith from the 2023 team. And then starting in January, I'll have episode 100, and I got a few things I'm going to push out for the 100th episode. That'll be with Scott VanDusseldorp. And then I'll have Gerardo Ibarra, Jordan Weiland, and Coach Kevin Eisenman on with me to kick off 2024. So if you want to give to the Sanger Legacy Fund or sponsor the podcast again, let me know. I'd be glad to talk to you about that. We're doing a lot of good things. Championship rings and plaques for the football team being one of the initiatives going on right now in the Sanger Legacy Fund. So, Amber, I appreciate it. It was a lot of fun to catch up with you. You're one
You
of
too.
people I always enjoyed watching as we went through athletics kind of together per se, and had a lot of fun talking to you. So thanks a lot.
Thank you.
You bet. Go Eagles.